Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to the Fan View, where today I'm delighted to be joined by our Aston Villa correspondent, Lee Jackson, to talk about what's going on at the Villa. Steven Gerrard dismissed last week. Lee messaged me just before and went, "We need to do a pod soon, mate." I said, "Don't worry. I don't think it'd be long, mate." And Aston Villa conveniently announced last night on Monday that Unai Emery will be the new Aston Villa manager from November the 1st. A little bit of a hold up with work permit issue, I believe, but he will take over from next Tuesday. Officially, he'll probably have some involvement, I guess, in some capacity for the weekend, although we're not allowed to say that. Lee, how are you, mate?
Delighted. I didn't think I'd be smiling when I sent you that message last week. But yeah, I'm in quite a buoyant mood after the announcement last night. Delighted that, and I said it at the time without wanting to rub salt into the wound, don't want to do a Wolves, don't want to be scrambling around going, shit, we haven't got a manager, and start panicking. So delighted that we've got someone in. Even more delighted that it's someone with the pedigree of Unai Emery. He would have been right near the top of my list. When Gerrard went, there was sort of a bucket list of three, if you like, that I would have said would love them, but not sure they're realistic. That'd have been Tuchel, Emery, and Poch. So the fact we've got one of those elite managers, and I would put Emery in that bucket. I'm absolutely delighted, really happy.
We'll come back onto Emery specifically because I think a lot of people be saying, look, amazing record in Spain, obviously, but not so much, obviously, in this country. And I think there's some circumstances why it didn't work out to plan at Arsenal, but we'll come back onto that. I want to take, in the first instance, you back to kind of, was it this time last year, roughly, where Gerrard was appointed?
Yeah, and we did a pod where I nearly broke down in tears, declared my love for Dean Smith, and said how upset I was at the time. I think
Was that part of the issue for him, that he was following on from someone who the fans loved?
maybe a little, but it was far more than that. I mean, we go back to when he first came in, and actually, he had a really good start. So he won his first match in charge, which was home to Brighton. He won his next one away at Palace, and the fans really got behind him. And he always spoke really well, a bit like when he was a player. He spoke really well in the media, gave good press conferences, articulate, intelligent, said the right things. But more and more over time, the performances just didn't match up. And under Dean Smith, there was quite a lot of times where we didn't get the results, but you'd sit back and say, well, the performance was good, though. Actually, we were a bit unlucky, or it just didn't go our way today. But the performance was good. Whereas under Gerrard, it felt like the opposite, where we'd win a game and you'd think, we're a bit lucky there, actually, even though we'd won. I'm not sure how we were hanging on a bit at the end. I think back to the Everton game at home this season that we won, and at the end it was like backs to the walls, bodies on the line defending, and that's just been the case too often. I mean, we had a really good spell in March, so beating Southampton 4-0, beating Leeds 3-0 at Elland Road, back to back, 3 wins back to back in total in March. But since then, we've played 22 Premier League matches and won 4 games. And 2 of those were against Burnley and Norwich, who aren't in the league anymore. So this isn't 11 games of this season where we've been poor and it's a harsh overreaction, if you like. It's fully justified to get rid of Gerrard. The football was bleak, and the lack of goals scored when you've got the attacking options that we've got in that squad is just shocking. Defensively, we haven't been too bad, actually, but in attack, I mean, Coutinho, 0 goals, 0 assists for the season. And he started the first 10 games, I think. Gerrard was only right at the end did Gerrard finally drop him, but we'd been calling for that for weeks because he just hasn't been right. And I like Felipe. He was brilliant. I was singing his praises when he first came in, and he is a class player, but he hasn't looked good this season. And Gerrard just seemed a bit slow to react and slow to drop players. McGinn started every game this season, new club captain, so I kind of understand why Gerrard was quite loyal to him, but he hasn't been great.
And what's all that about with the changing of the captaincy in hindsight? Did Tyrone Mings do anything to deserve losing the captaincy? Or was it a case of, obviously, he bought Diego Carlos from Seville, and we have to say Gerrard was unlucky there to lose him to a pretty severe injury. Was it the case that the intention was for Mings not to play, and therefore it would be best if the captaincy came off him? Because you've got a situation at the moment where I think Harry Maguire is technically still Manchester United's captain, but fourth choice centre-back, basically.
I think that was the case. So first game of the season, away at Bournemouth, lost 2-0, absolute disaster. But putting that to one side, the lineup was Concert and Carlos. So Mings was dropped for that first game of the season. He very quickly came back in. I think Concert picked up a knock in that game, which brought him back in actually initially. But yeah, Mings was dropped. And I think that was part of it. And actually, over the course of last season, Mings did drop a few clangers. And Carlos plays on the left. We said this on the Correspondence Week, didn't we? Carlos plays on the left primarily. Conser on the right. So actually, if anyone's going to drop out, it's probably not going to be Conser. It's more likely to be Mings. And so, I think that was part of why he moved the captaincy on, is because, hang on, if Mings isn't going to be nailed in my 11, probably makes more sense to move on to someone that I think will be.
Would you want that to change back?
So Emi Martinez was captain at the weekend. And that feels like the most sensible choice in my eyes anyway, because he is going to start every week. You haven't then got an issue where a player's dropped and who becomes
Sure, you don't
captain.
pick a captain based on he's going to play every game, surely. Don't do
that. No, that's not the primary reason. Emi is a big leader on that pitch. He's very vocal. I mean, a lot of people don't like goalies as captains, but you'll certainly vouch for the fact that it can work. And I mean, arguably nowadays, who wears the armband doesn't matter anyway, because most teams have 3 or 4 that are sort of in a leadership group. And just because you haven't got the armband doesn't mean you can't bark out instructions on the pitch. Anyone who's seen Mings this season will know that I don't think he's changed a lot, really, actually, in terms of how he communicates on the pitch. But no, I think there was justification to take that armband off Mings and say what Gerrard did at the time, which is, you know what, Tyrone, love you, but your game suffered a bit. It might be that actually you're trying too hard to lead the team rather than just focus on your game. Go back to basics, defend well, and focus on your game rather than being preoccupied with the team so much. But I don't think McGinn was the right choice for captaincy, purely because I'm not sure he's in our best 11. I mean, at the weekend, he didn't start. We had Luiz and Dendoncker in a double pivot. Admittedly, Dendoncker wasn't there at the start of the season. But I'm still not convinced McGinn's in our best 11. We've got Jacob Ramsey also, who probably should be starting most weeks and didn't at the weekend. So, for me, Emi for captaincy, just because leader on the pitch and nailed in that 11.
Do you think in hindsight that Gerrard suffered somewhat from the whole Liverpool thing in the background? It felt to the neutral like, I see you smiling away already. If he came to Villa, he did really well. That if Klopp went in 2-3 years, Gerrard would go to Liverpool, like almost like an inevitability. And there was this weird stuff, wasn't there? Like the odd thing on Liverpool's social media and he's more than entitled to go and play a charity game for his old club and stuff. That's fine. But the stuff about I'm back Reds and stuff like this on the social media felt, I'm not sure I'd been comfortable with my manager doing that.
It didn't bother me actually in the slightest, just because of his history there as a club legend and stuff. But you've got to look back and smile now that one of the biggest concerns that the Villa fans had at the time when he was appointed was, oh shit, what if we're just a stepping stone? What if he just goes to Liverpool in a couple of years? It's like, fucking hell, guys, if he does a brilliant job at Villa and then goes on to Liverpool, that's the least of our worries. Like,
that's true. No, in hindsight, you'd have preferred that, wouldn't you? Done really well and they come, I don't want him to go. Yeah.
Exactly. Do that first and then we'll worry about who's going to replace him.
But did that kind of also not help in terms of the connection? Because it feels like the connection, again, I think Dean Smith, you'd obviously mentioned, comes into the conversation in the sense of he was well known, he was a Villa boy, he was doing his best, etc. And there was that connection and he'd got you back up. So it wasn't like it was just, he's not just a fan. You know, he came in, got Villa out of shit. A really important period where if you'd not beat Derby in that playoff final, who knows where you'd be at the moment, for example.
Might be where Derby are now.
So, but did that not help in the sense of like the connection with Gerrard because of the whole Liverpool thing partly? And obviously what you'd had previously with Dean Smith, he just didn't connect.
I think there's definitely an element of that. A bit like when Moyes came in at United, or when Unai Emery went in at Arsenal. It's like big shoes to fill. Previous manager was adored by the fans. There is always an element of that. But we sang Gerrard's name for a long, long time, and that narrative isn't being picked up in the media now. But we were well behind him for months and months and months. It's not like we've turned from day one and never gave him a fair chance. That's not the case. So yeah, it's down to the performances more than anything. Bad results, I've said this to you before, bad results I can put up with if you can see that there was a game plan and it didn't work out. But under Gerrard, it rarely felt like we had a tangible, logical game plan.
So what was it? When it went well, when you had that 3-game run against, say, Brighton, Leeds, Southampton, and I'm not saying they're games that Aston Villa shouldn't expect to win, but you won them 9-0 over the course of that 3-game period, very impressively. What was going well then? What happened? Something clicked at that period where it felt like, oh, Villa were onto something here.
Yeah. So Coutinho, as we've said in the past, big confidence player. When he is confident, he can be unplayable at times. He's a real talent. He's definitely lost his confidence, and Gerrard even alluded to that in the last few weeks before the sacking. Jacob Ramsey, that is, was playing really well at the time. And I don't know, maybe a bit of luck as well. Maybe we're a little bit fortunate, but they were, like you say, they were convincing wins. It wasn't all down to luck. It was a really good spell for Villa. I think Coutinho was the main one there. He was really, really pulling the strings at that time.
Has that also not helped that it was Gerrard's, if you say, wouldn't want to say big money signing, because I don't think it cost you a huge amount. Although
it's poster boy.
Yeah, perfect. Poster boy, yeah. The fact that he's fallen off quite badly.
Yeah, I do think that has, like you say, that hasn't helped. The fact that his poster boy has been the player that's probably underperformed the most this season, who's been the one that the Villa fans have been going, he's not pulling his weight, he's not contributing enough, and he's Gerrard's boy, and he's not being dropped until the last couple of games.
What was the plan on pitch when you reflect on it now? What was he trying to achieve? I think there is something that I've got in my mind, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
There was lots of high press, so it was high energy. He wouldn't go long. He wanted to always play out from the back. But aside from that, what's in your brain? What are you thinking?
I just think he wanted the game very narrow, and he wanted to get the fullbacks higher, which I think he was with Cash and Dean.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You can see that, and I think part of the problem we found was obviously at Rangers. Listen, he did a very good job at Rangers. We shouldn't necessarily overlook that. People can say 2-team league, but he won the 2-team league and won it convincingly. I think what he found there is he could have complete domination over games and get those fullbacks high. You think of like Tavernier and Barisic at Rangers, for example. Wanted to do the same with Cash and Dean. And when it worked well, that period we discussed was the big double game week where Matty Cash got, 27, 28 FPL points or something?
Yeah.
Huge haul. So I think the plan was always to play narrow and get the fullbacks really high and offer protection with an out-and-out sitter in front of that. I think you had real problems. You'd spoke to us before about needing someone like Marvelous Nakamba in the team to actually out-and-out protect, because you were getting done over in that area. But when I watched you this year, I didn't see that coming through. It felt like it was drifting more and more away from that. And I think the difference, obviously, is getting domination, even with a diamond and having more players in there, doesn't guarantee you domination of the ball. And the most of the games, you didn't have it.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, Cash scored 2 in those 3 games. So the week before, away at Brighton, he scored as well. So getting those fullbacks forward, yeah, that was definitely what Gerrard was trying to do. And in hindsight, I think a lot of Villa fans would agree that Cash going forward certainly hasn't delivered this season. He hasn't looked as dangerous an attack. So that's maybe another issue.
And obviously Dean's had injuries as well.
Yeah, Dean's been out for 4 or 5 weeks now, I think.
It never felt like this season that he knew what he wanted to do with the attacking players.
No, and that was frustrating in that It seemed like every week he'd roll a dice and, Bailey and Ings this week, roll the dice next week. Oh, Coutinho, Watkins and Bailey. It did feel a bit of a lottery. The narrative of some of the Villa fans saying he doesn't know his best 11, don't quite buy into that, because in the modern game, you need to flex your squad a bit and you need to pick your players for the opposition to an extent and have a game plan. But it did feel a bit too random at times in terms of, does he really have a game plan here, or is he just picking the player that's looked the best in training that week?
Do you have any sympathy with what we said about Carlos' injury? And obviously, Boubacar Kamara got injured as well.
Yeah, big one. Yeah, I do to an extent. Those were the two big signings in the summer, and both of them have been missing for most of the season. So I do have sympathy for him for that. But with the squad that we had, it was still a better squad than Dean Smith had when he finished 11th. We finished 11th under Dean Smith, and the front line was your likes of Bertrand Traore, El Ghazi, and Trezeguet. And you think, well, those three, with respect, they're definitely not as good as Coutinho, Buendia, Bailey, Ings. And to have only scored a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 9 goals in 11 games in the Premier League with that front line, is just shocking, really.
There was the stat going around as well, wasn't it? Wasn't it Dean Smith was sacked 11 points from 10 and Gerrard had 1 less or something at the start of this season?
That was after the Fulham game, yeah.
It felt like once that statistic came out, we lasted about an hour afterwards, didn't he?
Yeah.
Do you think he's still got the makings of a good manager?
Gerrard?
Yeah, I mean, like if he took, let's just say, and it doesn't look for a second like it would happen, but say if he got offered the Wolves job as an example, do you think he could yet do well somewhere else?
I'm not sure. I don't want to be like, no, shit, but I wouldn't have any particular belief that he is going to do a good job and be a good manager elsewhere. I think he needs to focus on the tactics side of things. I think there are two things that make a good manager in my eyes. That's being really good with the tactics and being a really good man manager and motivator. I actually think he's got the second one. He had really strong relationships with all the players. Even up until last week, the reports from the media were saying he hasn't lost the dressing room here. The players are trying. It's just not working for him. And I think it is the other point, the tactics side of things. That's where he maybe needs to go back to the drawing board and think, right, study hard, watch some video highlights, get in a really good assistant, again, like Michael Beale, and work on the tactics side of things, understanding that side of the game.
How much of a blow was that, Beale going to QPR?
I think bigger than we realised at the time. There's an interview that Emi Martinez did. I think it was recorded in the summer, but he sort of said before Beale left, the interview was recorded, and he said, look, with most teams, you have the manager who briefs the team and has the game plan. We've always felt with Stevie, it's been like 2 of them, because Michael Beale, he'll quite often lead the discussions from a tactics and a game plan point of view. And like I said to you a few weeks ago, that's one other mitigating circumstance for Gerrard, is that Neil Critchley, the man from Blackpool who came in, he had only been in charge for 11 Premier League games. So for him, it was still very early days. But as we all know, it's a results business, and the results and performances were shocking. So you don't get time nowadays, do you?
Should he have got it?
No, not for me. I don't think so. I think it had gone far enough where performances were that bad that he couldn't remain in charge.
You and I know you're feeling positive today after last night's news, but if I said to you a week ago, or even if I'd spoke to you immediately after the Fulham defeat, if I'd have said, Lee, are you in a relegation battle, what would you have said?
No.
So you got enough confidence that you comfortably get out of it.
Yeah, I do. And that could be clipped and come back to bite me in the arse. But
we wouldn't do that to you, mate. We'd only do it to you if you finish 17th and just squeaked your way safe.
But no, and I've had a few eyebrows raised at me actually over the last month or so, especially from my old man, saying, look, we are not in a relegation battle. That squad, and it's been said before, but that squad is too good to go down.
That might be getting clipped.
I never felt like we were in a relegation battle. I just think that squad, even if Gerrard had remained in charge, we might have been in a relegation battle, but I don't think we'd have gone.
So if you're saying that the players were onside, doesn't sound like, because I think commonly here players lose interest, they lose the dressing room. I think most of us would have watched the Fulham game and gone, I think they've stopped playing here. Because even Gerrard himself said quite openly that even before Douglas Luiz was sent off, like the game could have been dead. Like, you weren't in it. And to be fair, Fulham are doing very well this season. I think there's a few people kind of overlooking that a bit, but you were getting well done over.
Oh,
You
yeah.
shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So there's us neutrals looking at it going, I'm not sure. Maybe the towel's gone in here. But you're saying that's not the case.
Maybe it was when we got to the Fulham game, but I'm talking like the few weeks before that. It certainly all the noises on that the media that were coming out weren't that the dressing room had turned or anything like that. There wasn't a mutiny. But yeah, that Fulham game, that first half, like you say, and like Gerrard, to be fair to him, did say, could have been 3 or 4 at half time. We were second best in every single department.
And yet 4 days earlier, for an hour against Chelsea, you were a better team.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about that. So I was at that one at Villa Park, and how we weren't winning at half time. And we weren't even drawing, we were losing 1-0. But Jesus, Kepa had an absolute blinder, didn't he? But yeah, that was the first time this season where we thought, well, no, actually, the Man City game was very good as well. But yeah, great performance a few days before. But it's no good putting in really good performances against Chelsea and still losing 2-0. Really good performance against City and get a point. If you're then going to go to Ellen Road, play against 10 men for half the game and not score a single goal.
It's interesting just reflecting actually on you've played, I'm just trying to think, you've played all of the big six at Villa Park in this calendar year. You had the 2-2 with United where it was Coutinho's debut, where you come from 2-0 down and you could have even ended up winning the game eventually. You gave Liverpool a real fright back in May. Arsenal, you didn't play well. You lost 1-0. You gave my team a hell of a fright, and you look at the scoreline afterwards, Tottenham won 4-0. It wasn't a 4-0 game. It was similar to the Chelsea game.
Yeah, it
was. In the sense that you could have been a couple up at half time, actually. And I wonder why that is. Because actually, when we reflect on Sunday just gone, you've actually done the same thing, but to Brentford. You've completely overpowered them early in the game. But we haven't seen enough of that in other games this season against, let's say, so-called lesser opposition or smaller opposition.
Certainly at Villa Park, we seem to have an ability to, when it's a big game, I think it might have been the season before last or last season against Liverpool, where we were 1-0 up with 10 minutes to go and they scored 2 and won 2-1. But we have an ability to just raise ourselves for those big games. But then the following week, when we're playing someone that's in the bottom three, it's the opposite, where the whole end sometimes can be stood there.
Well,
going,
I was going to say, is
guys.
that fan culture as well a little bit? That the fans know, big game today, we've got to get behind the team and stuff, and the atmosphere is better. And I wonder if you had that on Sunday, where there was this vibe going into Brentford of, okay, right, we don't know what's happening yet, but certainly we're in the shit at the moment. We need to help the players here. So it almost felt like a bigger game than Brentford per se. Yeah, whereas when you play Team X, who's 15th, there's a waiting for the team to perform. I've experienced this a lot at Tottenham down the years. When we've been in similar positions to yourself, it's only them. We don't need to get behind the team today. Is there a culture problem of that with the support of Villa?
I think there definitely can be an element of that at Villa Park. Sometimes it can feel like, this is only X club who's in the bottom three. Come on, guys, you turn these over. Like it's 0-0 after half an hour. Someone misplaces a pass and you hear that groan
start.
Yeah, all that starts and you think, it's not really helping the team, is it? This is when they need us more than ever, but actually we're starting to get on their backs a bit because we're not winning. So there's certainly an element of that, and I think most Premier League teams get that every now and again, where the fans can start to turn.
Yeah, it's everywhere, mate. The culture of expectation. It's just interesting that in those games where you'd expect the atmosphere to be louder at Villa Park, have actually been some of your better performances. It's interesting to reflect on. Let's talk about the new man a little bit then.
Mm-hmm.
So, first choice for you, Unai Emery? Was that on Thursday night you were thinking that's who I want?
No, Poch was top of the list, but I'm not sure that was ever realistic.
I wouldn't have been that bothered if he went to you. I'd have been okay with that, I think.
Poch, Tuchel, again, not sure that was ever realistic. But aside from that, There was Amarim, who's the sporting manager. He was
Very highly rated.
Bookie's favourite for a while, who I felt a little indifferent about. Like, he looks exciting, but I don't know a lot about him, to be completely honest. And then, yeah, you likes of Emery, who would have been next in line. So as far as realistic appointments go, I think we've probably got as good as we could have got. I don't see another name in there who I think, oh, we could have got him. I wish we'd have got him.
You wouldn't have rather had, because the league position's great, not great, an experienced Premier League head like a Sean Dyche, for example? Or
No, it doesn't excite me, the idea of getting a Sean Dyche in.
Is that important for Villa to have attractive football?
Is
that important to the fan base? Because obviously you've had a period here where a lot of the results have obviously not been good. 4 wins in 22, as you said. But it's felt, as much as the results, it's been the performances recently. The draw at Leeds, the draw at Forest, even the Southampton home win was. I kill myself watching this, basically.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah, I think the performances do matter, and that was always the way under Dean Smith. Is that even some of the games that we lost, it was like, wow, that was exciting. Like, it was fun to watch, and we went for it. It didn't come off, but Jesus, we gave it a really good go there, and we were throwing everyone forward at the end. So yeah, I mean, me personally, I'll take a boring 1-0 every day of the week. It's results matter far more than me. If Villa could win a cup or get into Europe, that would be the absolute dream. And I don't really care if the football isn't sexy.
So if the results are okay, the performances don't matter. But obviously, like anyone, if you've got shit performances and shit results, you're recipe to disaster. So it's not what I mean is it's not, you get certain clubs, like I think, say at West Ham as an example, some of the fans there just cannot take to David Moyes because they've been built up on this West Ham way and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like that. But
okay,
I don't think there's a Villa way of you have to play a certain style or anything like that.
Because one of the accusations that will be thrown at the very successful Unai Emery, and he has been, was it 4 Europa League trophies? Villarreal to Champions League semi-finals last year is remarkable. Includes knocking out Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
One of the accusations will be you're possibly not going to see Fred in football here.
Yeah, heard that already doing the rounds on Twitter. Which it could be tough, like I say, with that Villa Park crowd. If it's 0-0 against a lower half team, the crowd aren't going to be loving life at that moment. So there might be tough moments in there. But the response from Villa Twitter generally in the last 24 hours has been unanimously positive. Like, wow, we've got a top manager here, from the vast majority of people. They had some idiot on TalkSport earlier who was saying he failed at Arsenal and stuff, but I don't buy into that narrative personally.
Some will say that. So
he finished 5th at Arsenal.
Is 5th acceptable for Arsenal? I think most Arsenal fans would say no.
No, probably not. But the squad that he had at that time wasn't great. It was in fact, I've got it in front of me here. It was your likes of, if you cast your mind back to Torreira. Aubameyang was in his early days there. He was probably the star player at that point. He had Socrates, Guendouzi, Maitland-Niles, Xhaka, Mustafi. Ozil was at the sort of end of his career, Mkhitaryan.
Quite missed that Arsenal, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, I bet you do at the moment. But it wasn't your world beater Arsenal team with a Van Persie in there or a Thierry Henry. It was by Arsenal's high standards, an average Arsenal squad. And he finished 5th, yeah, which doesn't sound great, you're right, but it was 2 points off 3rd. So it wasn't like he was a million miles away from achieving that top 4 finish or even top 3 finish. He got them to the Europa League final. So I think the narrative on Emery failed at Arsenal is a very simplistic, lazy bit of journalism, and actually it's a bit more nuanced than that.
But I don't think, on reflection, and obviously Arteta's doing a good job there now, but I don't think when he got sacked, I didn't hear any Arsenal fans think it was an incorrect decision or anything. No. The majority of them would, he's got to go.
Yeah. I mean, if you believe what's been said, though, he didn't get the players that he wanted. So he wanted Zaha in that summer, and they signed Nicola Pepe. So he wasn't having maybe the control that he wanted in terms of the players that were coming in, which I suppose is an interesting one to discuss whether he'll get that at Villa, because they have Johan Langer, who's the sort of sporting director who we believe oversees most of the transfer business. But during this summer, Ismail Assar was set to sign for Villa, reportedly, went and met up with Gerrard, and Gerrard said, I don't want him. So it looks like the guys in charge at Villa will give the manager some say in terms of who's brought in and who's not.
So we don't think the manager's not got full control on signings. Would that be fair then?
Exactly.
How do you feel about
that? I think it's okay nowadays. I think there has to be a kind of balancing act, but getting that balancing act right can be really challenging in terms of who has the final say. But that doesn't concern me massively, because I feel like from everything that I've read in the last 12 hours or so, Emery's biggest strength isn't his operations in the transfer market, it's his operations on the pitch and the tactics board. That's his real strength. He's a tactician who loves his video analysis and loves watching games of football back and understanding the game plans and what went well and what went wrong. So no, I'm not overly concerned about that. Before we came on, actually, I saw someone on Twitter who's a Villa fan who put, I don't know if I've ever felt this optimistic as a Villa fan. And there is a lot of that going around, which we might be getting a bit carried away with ourselves. But I think that tells you just how bleak it felt under Gerrard.
I think you're very entitled to be excited about a new appointment and a new start. I think there's absolutely natural, almost irrespective of who you support. You should be feeling fresh and excited for what comes next. Anything new is always exciting. It's the same as when you buy players in the window. You might get to the end of August and think, oh, they're crap actually. But when you sign new players, if you don't know a lot about them, it's exciting. So
yeah,
we don't truly know what we're going to get with Unai Emery. What would you say to people who would have an accusation that he's better off working at a club that is below the top tier in terms of challenging for domestic league title, for example, which Villa obviously currently aren't in the running for that sort of thing? There's a narrative that he's better off going in and firefighting, a little bit like what you said, and just getting the best out of what he's got.
Yeah, I'd agree.
How do you feel about that?
So what do you mean? So
as in the narrative that's how people are perceiving Villa and Emery.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And that is probably a nice place for him to come in, where the weight of expectation that there might have been at Arsenal, there isn't at Villa. No one's expecting him to get us into Europe this season or next season. And it is a case of stabilise the ship and build something. And if he can get us to Europe in a few years' time, I think everyone would accept that is a bloody brilliant job he's done.
So what's the expectation for Villa? What do Villa fans want? You're saying not Europe this year, not Europe next year. When do Villa want it? And is that the expectation? Or is there we're stuck being behind you might as well put 7 now with Newcastle in now?
Yeah, I'm not saying not Europe this year, not Europe next year, as in that's not what we want. But I think that's not expected. It's not like if we don't qualify for Europe next season, get rid of him type thing. Pushing for Europe is always the phrase that's thrown around with most bottom half Premier League teams. And that is the phrase that lots of the Villa fans have used on social media in the last 12 months, is that that's where we should be. We are a big club with a massive fan base and a great history, and we should be pushing to get back to those days. Like you say, though, with your Newcastles joining that top 6 now, it's only going to get tougher. And realistically, we haven't finished in the top half of the Premier League for over 10 years now. So that would be a big, big step in the right direction. It's worth saying under Dean Smith with 55 points, that was the highest points tally ever to finish bottom half, as you know.
Oh, you still miss him, didn't you?
Yeah.
Would you have had him back? Just interestingly. If suddenly we're having Dean Smith back from Norwich.
If we couldn't get Emery, then potentially. But if you'd have said to me Dean Smith or Emery, well, if you say to me now Dean Smith or Emery, I'll take Emery every day of the week.
What are we expecting tactically from Emery then?
So 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2 seems to be his preferred formations. We played a 4-2-3-1 against Brentford at the weekend. So that's it, sorted. We're going to win the Europa League next season, I guess.
You ain't qualified for it, mate. You just told me. You never know. You might win the FA Cup.
Yeah, right. I tell you what, I love the
Do
fact
you
that
know
he's
what?
a
If you
good cup
qualify for that,
manager,
the
though.
excitement would go through the roof.
I
Honestly,
know,
give me
but
15th in the league. Just keep us in that cup.
yeah, well, it's been so long since we've won a cup. I was 4 the last time we won a cup, so yeah, it's been a while. Which is also really exciting from a Villa point of view, whereas some teams might be like a Tottenham, where you have won a cup in recent memory. It wouldn't
Doesn't
be
feel
quite.
like it, mate.
Yeah, compared to us anyway. Um, but for us, it would be so big, even just a League Cup. I say
So
just a
that's what,
League Cup.
96.
96, yeah, correct. So yeah, that's really exciting that we've got a manager who is a good cup manager. That'd be really exciting. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think 4-2-3-1 was probably preferred most commonly at Arsenal. We did occasionally play a back three. At Arsenal, I'm pretty sure he did in one North London derby, actually, where I think Arsenal won 4-2. I'm sure they played a back three that day. At Villarreal last year, it was more commonly a flatter 4-4-2.
yeah,
But I don't know if that was a weight of meeting against the caliber of opponents that they were playing against. So I think he has tactical variety. I think I'd summarise and say I think it was very unlucky at Arsenal in the sense that I just reflect on it and just think he was just the wrong person at the wrong time. It was the wrong fit for Arsenal at that time. And whoever took over, like what you said, after Wenger, you mentioned obviously Moyes and Ferguson, was almost doomed to fail. You're going to have to do
yeah,
something absolutely remarkable as the first new one to come in afterwards and do great with. And I think Villa fans would be absolutely right to focus on his achievements in Spain rather than worry about what he did at Arsenal. I also think it's easier at the moment to compare Villarreal with Aston Villa rather than compare Arsenal with Aston Villa
yeah.
at the moment. So I think, yeah, you have every right to be excited. Do you think he's got a Villa lined up somewhere in Birmingham? Because he seems to be managing all the Villas. I can't think of any left after Sevilla and Villarreal and Aston Villa.
Get David Villa out of retirement, maybe.
Villa out of retirement. You got me thinking about Ricky Villa now, mate. No, really good. I think look, you'll be fine. You're not going to be in trouble with that sort of appointment. I think it will need some patience, definitely.
Yeah, and
Because
that's
it's
the
not.
challenge.
I think if Villa fans are suddenly thinking we've got a proven winner, we're going to break into the top 4 or 6 in 18 months, like that's going to be a huge challenge, and it's going to take time. Hopefully, the manager is going to come in and realise that as well. That yeah, it is going to take some time. I think Villa fans, like most in your sort of position at the moment, just want to see progression. They want to see a direction of where it's going. And I think it got to the stage, you could tell sort of the atmosphere at the Forest draw, where it was like, that's enough now. Where I think Villa fans couldn't see the direction anymore of where the club was heading
Exactly.
on the pitch. Is it heading in the right direction off the pitch before we finish?
Yeah, so I'm really happy with the ownership now. So Nassef Suarez and Wes Edens came in 2018 when we were in the Championship. They've spent money several times now. They've put their hands in their pockets to spend pretty big. The communication has improved drastically. We think about the Grealish sale and Purslow coming out with a statement straight away to say, look, we've sold our club captain. It's a big deal. We get it, but this is the plan. We've brought in 3 signings, planning stadium redevelopment, having fan consultation groups regularly. And they're designing a new badge at the moment, and they've been speaking to the fans a lot. All of the members, even non-season ticket holders like myself, have had surveys in your emails to say, look, we want to hear your thoughts. And it's good. The communication from the owners has been really positive. So don't have any issues with them at all. And I think at the time they were right to go for Gerrard. I don't think many Villa fans, when he was first appointed, said, oh, that's a shit appointment. I think there was an acceptance that actually it could be really good.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, actually. Lee, thank you so much. FPL assets briefly. I presume you haven't got any.
No, I think it's watch and wait, isn't it? So, I mean, ahead of the World Cup, we've got Newcastle away, Man United home, Brighton away. And then after the World Cup, we've got Liverpool and Spurs. So I think it's keep an eye on us, see how we get on. And I will say it again, Bailey at 4.6 million, it could be amazing if he cements the starting position and starts scoring some goals. So cheap.
them 3 games aren't speaking to me. I got to be totally honest. Like those upcoming 3, it's a tough start.
Oh,
and
yeah,
those,
exactly.
And those 2 games after Christmas are going to mean we're probably not. But I'm sure the guys will be pleased to know I've got you scheduled on for Clash of the Correspondents before your trip to Tottenham in game week 18, because the 4 that follow it, Wolves at home, Leeds at home, Southampton away, and Leicester at home, offer an interesting little opportunity where I think we can have a look again and watching Brave. Lee, thanks as always, mate. I wish you the very best of luck with Unai Emery. I think it'll be fine, mate. I don't think anybody's looking at it again as a bad appointment. I think it's a very, very good appointment. And I think Villa probably needs someone to come in there who's got experience at the moment. And he does know the league. He's not coming in as an alien overseas manager. He does know how the league works. I think you'll be fine, mate. Good luck. Where can everyone follow you on the Bird app, my friend?
It's Lee_Jackson_92.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. On Patreon today, guys, our UCL Fantasy Matchday 5 preview is already out. Suj will be rejoining me tomorrow for the Sky Fantasy Football Podcast. And in case you didn't already hear, Suj is winning Sky Fantasy this year. That'll be out for your lunchtime-ish tomorrow. Just leaves me to say thanks again to Lee. Good luck to Villa fans if you're listening for the rest of the season. Cue music, please, man child.